This moment appears to be leaving the Gutenberg and into the Google world. What advice would you give to preachers, teachers, or parents? Take your pick.
You know, I've been incredibly blessed with incredibly wonderful children that are very solid. They went to a Hollywood High type school, and at one point my son Robbie, he said, you know, the reason that we haven't done drug, sex, whatever it happens to be, and they don't even watch television, although I urge them to watch the elections and things, they won't do it. Even though they don't, he says, is because while we went to a school where kids were driving Ferraris and Maseratis, and you know, you had all the famous kids that were there. At one point there was a picture in the LA Times of the 3 biggest sports figures and their kids were there. But we had to drive Mom to UCLA once a week for her chemotherapy. And I had spent a period being very annoyed about and angry at God and about this whole pain and suffering. And he said, but you know, it taught us discipline, responsibility. So they have had all that. And then to apply it, he said the other day, he said, you know, the reason we're doing all this, the reason people look at us and say, what's the difference, is because you walk the walk and not just talk it. You're living it in a very powerful way. All you can do is be clear, transparent, and do your job, and whatever God calls you to do.
And for your kids, walk the walk.
Yeah. And to love one another. And they will know we're Christians by our love.
We're with our friend Dr. Ted Baehr, who's been in a very difficult place, but a very fun place, trying to make maximum meaning in Hollywood, California. Thanks so much for the time. God's blessings.
Oh, God bless you.
What do you think is more difficult to work with, Hollywood or the church?
Well, I think it's, you know, your cameraman gave a great insight there, that it's different. But most of the people, Hollywood is divided into different groups. And when you're in the hinterland, whether you're in the church or a synagogue or wherever else, they look at Hollywood as this monolithic institution that has certain nefarious characteristics, and there's a lot to be said for that. But the fact of the matter is that Hollywood is made up of about 300 people who are active. There are about 30 people who actually run the 6 major studios, and of that you've got people who are Christian, Buddhist, Jewish, whatever else they happen to be, and they share a common desire, which is to have their movies succeed. Now, those are not the independent filmmakers. The independent filmmakers, Michael Moore may have an agenda that he wants to push, but the Hollywood agenda is to make a movie that everybody's going to see. And when everybody doesn't see it, whether if it contains Tom Cruise and everybody's going over to Despicable Me, they have to worry about what they're doing. And so the Hollywood people are easier to work with in the sense that they are always looking for keys to expand their marketplace. You know, at one point UCLA had a study of all the advocacy groups that were working in Hollywood. The man who put it together at UCLA, who's actually a person of faith and values, uncovered over 1,000 different advocacy groups. And when he called us all together, he got about 130 or 40 of them together. And they went everywhere from Arab advocacy groups, for Muslim groups, to Jewish groups. I think there were about 9 Jewish groups. There were about 20 sexual identification groups of different flavors, etc., all the way down the line. And they're all working, and Hollywood is always listening to them. The nice thing is that the head of Universal got up and said, you know, 2 of the groups that we consider have the most influence, and one of them was ours. One of them was the opposite of that, because they think we represent, or at least understand, a little bit of a large audience that they need if they're really going to make money. So we always have a good reception. You've been to our gala. We have people who come to our gala year after year who are not Christian. We have people who change, like the head of Sony says it's his favorite event. I don't think he's just saying that because he wouldn't come back every year. So on February 18th this year, we're going to do our gala again. We'd love to have people come and see. And we had one of our board members, I've been urging people to do this for a long time, maybe you did it too, adopt one of the people at the table who had great questions about faith and was fighting against the faith and had grown up in a semi-faith background and sort of Buddhist now. And he's come back and he's on fire and they text every day and this is good. And Movieguide helps gather all this data. The other side of the coin is, you asked me about, is the people in the church. And I'd say those are, again, divided into many different groups. There's a youth, and most of what I see, I lectured at Yale last year, is that they're looking for more stability and they're looking for more, you know, the LA Times study that 74% of the young girls don't like sex and violence and get offended by it. And actually, if you ask a little kid and you turn on a program that has too much sex and violence, they say, oh, that's yucky. They really do not want it. And they gravitate toward movieguide.org. They build movieguide.org. A little bit older, we're seeing, and one of the books I have here is called Cultivate, which goes through all these stages. And I don't want to say too much about it because I think some of these identifications of the emerging generation and the different generations get baby boomers or whatever else are silly. But a little bit older, and they're trying to be all things to all people, and they get concerned when you become too, this is who we are, this is our identification. Whereas Hollywood loves that.
Because they know who to market to.
Right. Head of Warner Brothers, when I went in, I said, the Christian Film and Television Commission, and he said, I am so glad I have these people come in and say they're the family association, and I'm not going to tell you which family association. And he says, you know, and I say, well, my 3 male secretaries are a family. What are you going to do about that? And he says, I just push them because they don't have, I see that your group is something I have to understand. So there's a core value system that we can identify. So I think we have to be more open to say, this is who we are. You know, we're from Minnesota, or from Colorado, or wherever we're from, and we have to be proud of who we are, and rightfully so. If you want to find out more about the Movie Guide Awards, which occur on February 18th, and we give out the $100,000 prize for movies with faith and values, go to movieguide.org or go to movieguideawards.com. We'd love to have you there and mentor one of these wonderful people and bring them into a great place.